Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 300 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack for Business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Franzgrode from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc.
Today's topic is lead smarter, not harder, unlocking the secrets of leadership success. How do you become the kind of leader who inspires trust, aligns your team, and confidently navigates growth and change? That's what our guest is all about here today. And his name is Brant Lingle from SHV Partners. Brant is a seasoned leadership advisor from SHV Partners. He's passionate about helping organizations and leaders become the best versions of themselves while making a meaningful impact on the world. With 30 years of experience, including a decade at senior executive level, Brant specializes in three key areas: leadership development, guiding senior leaders in decision-making, and mindset shifts while helping emerging leaders step into their roles with confidence. Leadership alignment brings strategic clarity, conflict resolution, and communication strategies to ensure teams and boards work cohesively, and leading through growth and change, advising organizations on structural transitions to foster long-term scalability and success. And with a master's degree in organizational leadership and a suite of certifications in leadership assessment, press consulting, and nonprofit management, Brant is a trusted partner for leaders navigating complexity and transformation. Brant, by the way, welcome. And do you have a favorite quote or saying that you want to share?
Thank you, Bernie, and thank you, Wayne. This is one of my favorite poets. I love a lot of different poetry. This is Rainer Maria Rilke. And he says, all becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they come toward me to meet and to be met.
Very nice. I've never been quoted poetry yet on this show before, so Brant, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, leadership. I've been tossed into the fray. I remember way back when, just starting out in this one place that I was working in the corporate universe, and we were contract staff and wanting to be in a leadership position. And all of a sudden, there I am. I'm going, what do I got to do next? What do we get wrong when we land that? Ta-da, you've been handed the keys to the kingdom. And although it's a small one, what do we get wrong? What's happening in leadership development?
That's a great question, Bernie. You're not alone in that experience. I've talked to so many leaders and myself included in my own journey where you're just thrown into the fray or tossed into the deep end. It connects to the quote that I shared around. Those moments we are invited to meet those moments with curiosity and wonder. And I think the thing that we get wrong is that we assume that we're supposed to know what we're doing. We assume that to be in a leadership role means I have to have all the answers. Most of us, that just isn't the case. Sure, we have training, degrees, certifications, experiences. But when we're in leadership roles, if we assume that the reason we're there is because we have all the answers, that's a mistake.
Active listening, I understand, is also a key thing. How do you define active listening as opposed to I'm listening? My wife accused me of not having active listening because she says something, I go, yep. And then she says something else, going, yep. All he's saying is, yep. So what's active listening?
It's a great question. We often will start talking about active listening with identifying and defining there maybe 15 or 20 barriers to active listening. And so we'll put this in front of leaders, we'll slide on paper, and we'll say, identify one or two that are common patterns for you. And Bernie, I'm not kidding, almost every time people go, there's no option that says all of the above. The things that get in the way of our listening, we teach a simple pattern. To actively listen means you're being fully present, you're trying to be fully there for the person as much as you can be. We have a million things in our mind. The pattern is simple. You say something, I listen, and then I pause. Sometimes we skip the pause, but the pause is powerful because you may still have something else to say. And I don't feel pressure to come up with a quick answer. So the pause is really powerful there. And then I simply reflect back to you. This is what I'm hearing. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of, I don't have to quote you, but just a sense of you feeling heard creates an experience where you also feel understood and maybe even feel valued. I'm paying attention to you. It goes back to that quote that I shared. showing up and paying attention. That's like a critical skill for leaders. And then I'll pause again because it gives you a chance to hear yourself. A lot of times people like to hear themselves process, and then I'll ask a question. I'll inquire about what you said rather than providing an answer or telling you what to do. So that simple pattern is how we define active listening and why it's important as a number one leadership skill is most people have that need to feel valued and heard and understood.
Brant, tell me about a lesson you learned in leadership by doing it very badly the first time.
Oh, Wade, that's a great question. I feel like we've all had those train wrecks and a couple scars and bumps and bruises. I remember early in my leadership careers, I had a very significant responsibility over a program, like it was like a youth program. It was a nonprofit and had about maybe 30 or 40 volunteers involved. And I remember one day, I don't even know how this realization came to me, but I just had this reflection. If I were to get hit by a bus on the way to this thing, it would be a total disaster. I could picture kids running all over the place and volunteers pulling their hair like, we don't know what we're supposed to be, just disaster. And it was in that moment, Wayne, that I realized I need to help other people. There's a lot of the responsibilities that I do that others can do. It's not that difficult. I shifted a lot of my doing to helping others learn how to do. And it helped me realize I can share the wealth. There's a lot of little details and responsibilities. Some people enjoy that more than I do on certain things. They're better at it. And it creates a scalability model. Whereas if I keep doing all the things, that was almost a train wreck that was a bit avoided through that insight.
It's interesting how you describe that. It's the key critical man insurance, why you have that insurance in place, right? Because if something happens, you have support. That speaks to how you get people to, in other words, if you can't make it because you're running late or you're sick, that'll happen to all of us. How do you get that power to them? And how do you distribute that, share that ability to respond to a situation without having to have a manual sitting there that everybody has a sense of what you're doing and so forth?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in my leadership style over the years, I've been much more relational, invitation, and then create a simple process that someone feels like they can be successful and then take it from there and make it even better. I think of the concept of buy-in, where I'll speak with a lot of leaders, CEOs, presidents, C-suite, VP, director level, in a variety of businesses and industries. And I come across a misconception that buy-in is about me persuading you to do what I want you to do. I'll ask questions about buy-in and they'll say, sure, yeah, they're bought in. And a lot of it comes with that mindset that I possess as a leader, some power of persuasion. I'm going to convince you that this is the better way to go. What I'm coming to appreciate about buy-in, especially in what feels like a workforce shift over the last maybe 5 or 10 years, closer to consent culture, where employees want to feel valued. Part of the way that you can help them feel valued is by giving them power, giving them an opportunity to actually say no, giving them an opportunity to say yes, to opt in, to buy in. I want to do that. So some of that can just be a simple, this is what needs to be done. Do you want to do that? And that could be a very scary question because what if they say no? Do they get to say no? Maybe they do. So right there from the very beginning is that I'm sharing power. If I'm a supervisor, manager, or boss, whatever role, I have some level of authority. If I'm giving you an opportunity to choose, I'm giving you power. And that is a way that once that power is shared, now we're creating a need to clarify, what am I agreeing to? What am I actually saying yes to? Do I have clarity? Can I be successful? Do I have the resources? And so now we create this negotiation, this conversation that is, to me, if it's based on the relationship and really the end goal is you, the person taking on this responsibility to be successful and to accelerate what is actually happening, do it better than I can. That to me is where buy-in actually happens.
Brant, I'm guessing that the new leader or the junior leader in my own life was all about ego. It was all about chest pounding. Look how impressive I am, and you must obey. What do you think gets people out of that mindset before they self-destruct?
Yeah, I feel like, again, I think there could be an aspect, Wayne, that ship has sailed a little bit, maybe not entirely. Or if I'm an emerging leader, or maybe I'm early in my career, in the first 5 to 7 years of my career, and I'm in significant leadership, I have a high value of shared intelligence and collaboration. It goes back to that very first question about what we often can get wrong in leadership, is that I think that I'm the expert of everything and have all the answers. If I don't have that mindset, but I realize, hey, if I can learn how to gain the best ideas out of this diverse group of people, that's going to lead us towards the best solutions. It doesn't mean everything is consensus or every decision is a vote. It doesn't always mean that, but if I can learn how to develop those skills, do it in a pretty efficient way, and keep people highly engaged, then there's not really a need for ego. Look at me. I'm like, why are you acting like that? No one's asking you to. That's not how we do things. So I think there has been a shift in the workforce in the last 5 to 10 years where the higher value is a leader is someone who can have a diverse team of people produce high outcomes by shared intelligence.
Question to ask you: does size matter? So I've been in an institution that was 10,000 strong with another 10,000 wrapped around it just for good measure. They weren't on the payroll, but they were part of the mothership. With 3 different campuses, there are a lot of layers. If you think of a government agency or large corporations, take your pick. Does the size matter then? What are the tells then when things aren't in alignment? And small business, you can tell because people are just giving each other the hairy eyeball. But in a large space, how can you tell? How do you tell if they're cued in?
Yeah, I think the larger the organizations, the more almost like cultures. So you're thinking globally, like we're in different countries, different areas of the world. It provides an even greater opportunity for diversity and shared intelligence. I think we'll call them like alignment cracks. You can tell if there's not alignment, if there's confusion, if, you have to dust off your mission, vision, and value statements, and they're not regularly a part of conversations and meetings. If people don't know some of your KPIs around whatever your outcomes are, whether it's customer satisfaction or you're growing in a certain market space, those things will be indicators. But if you're not practicing the habits of leadership alignment, it becomes apparent in terms of people. That's how you do it over in that division, but we're going to do it our way over here. There could be allowance for a different approach based on different cultures, but if it's not being talked about at all and agreed upon, and there's buy-in around some of those decisions, that's where some of those alignment cracks start showing.
Is it also based on complexity of the message? So I think if you have goals or a mission statement, if it's 15 pages long, is that too much?
Yeah, if it's 15 words long, it might be too much. One of the things that I just was on a retreat last week with a CEO and president, and it said it has to be memorable. The burden of leadership is repetition. Until you feel like you've said it so many times that you're just so sick of hearing it, those are the moments where it starts to actually just begin to click for some people. You want to use these key words, these key phrases that align with your mission or your vision or your values. I loved the work that we did with this president. He came up with 4 values and he has a lot of energy around them. So they're very easy for him to remember, laundry list. And he's got to where's that paper? And I got to bring that out. It's something that should be top of mind for him and his leadership team. So that's the next step in alignment, is making it a regular habit, part of all the things.
Brant, one thing my industry, I'm a life coach by training, and one thing my industry uses too much is clarity. But how do you make sure the team clearly understands what they should be doing, what you want from them, and what you hope people are achieving?
It's a great question, Wayne. Clarity is, again, I'm in consulting and coaching as well. And so it's a key outcome, I think, that happens. It's almost like something that leaders want and feel like they lack. But when they have a coaching session with you, Wayne, or they're in a consultation, they're like, we just feel more clear. We're more on the same page and understand. This is the challenge I gave to the president last week. We went through a whole day of MVV work. I said, this is when you'll know. When you communicate it at your leadership team meeting next week, 6 weeks later, you pressure test it in the field and ask at different layers, randomly ask, what part of our mission statement has you most energized? And if people that are 2 or 3 or 4 tiers down from your leadership team, so 5 levels removed from you, go, what mission statement? Then you know clarity hasn't happened. It hasn't even been talked about yet. Like, you give it some time, you give it clear directive. I'm just going to ask, which part of our vision do you have questions about? It assumes they would know. And if they don't know, then you know, oh, okay, that's no problem. And it's not about that person. Then you bring it back to the source and say, okay, I pressure tested and we didn't get to where we needed to go. So how do we get there? Let's work. Let's problem solve this.
Right. What kind of work were those 3-letter initials that you do?
Mission, vision, and values. One of the baselines for leadership alignment is really drilling down into your mission. A lot of organizations probably have a mission statement. When was the last time you talked about it? Is there meaning? Like, you're trying to create meaning. What is the vision? A lot of times mission may not change a lot, at least over decades, but vision can often change every several years. Now, because we've reached this point, now we're trying to reach this point. And then your values is simply your behaviors. If your leadership team does not behave in alignment with the values of the organization, then there's misalignment, and that can create almost like a cynicism within an organization. Practice what you preach kind of ideas.
It does bring up something. And again, I'm basing this on past experience and past observations in a corporate setting where someone says, oh, here we go again. We're about to learn something new. Another iteration. The overall intent is great. But at the same time, some people they're worn because it's not a startup. And it generates conflict. And sometimes there's pushback, maybe not with the senior executive, but with the manager, or it just is not working between the teammates at the floor level. How do you handle the conflicts that might crop up in these magic moments?
Yeah, I like that phrase, magic moments. I had a COO, VP of operations, large mechanical company, after a senior leadership team workshop. And we were talking about emotional intelligence. We did some leadership personality assessments, Hogan assessment. At the end, he pulled aside one of my colleagues and said, people actually talk about this. Filter and expletive. So we said, yes, people actually do talk about this. We're learning there are certain aspects within industries where this is a little bit newish. To your point, Bernie, we're like, here we go again. It's the annual revisiting of whatever the initiative is from leadership. And there can be a little bit of that cynicism. So when those conflicts come up, I like to take a curious stance and say, what is it about past experiences that has created this cynical approach? It didn't feel worth your time. It wasn't satisfactory. It didn't help. And what can we do differently in this iteration where it would feel more helpful, that it would actually create the change that you're hoping to see? What is the change that you want to see? So it can just be an opportunity to get curious around those things and open conversation. When someone pushes back a little bit, I think those are great invitation moments to get curious and ask a few questions.
One thing that I hear a lot in the jargon industry is scaling.
Yes.
Not everybody that talks about scaling understands why to do it or what it really means. What do you see the benefits of scaling up, and why would you want to?
Yeah, it's a great question. In each situation, it would be important. Like, what are the expectations, the outcomes? Like, what does scaling mean to you? What needs to be different now than it was before? A quick illustration, going back to my story earlier, the hit by a bus moment was a scaling moment in that nonprofit. I, as a primary leader, turned my attention away from a lot of the doing to training, equipping, building up. I looked at every aspect of what I did and what needed done in the organization, and I tried to duplicate myself. The mindset was, I'm trying to work myself out of a job every 6 to 18 months. If I'm doing this one thing, don't do it alone. Bring along, train up someone so that way 18 months from now, they can start taking on those responsibilities. That might be a microcosm example of scaling. It really just depends on, are there training aspects? Is this like you're trying to take this business unit and create 10 of those in different regions? It depends on the outcomes from my perspective. I think a lot of it will start from, what are you trying to accomplish? Why do you want to scale? And then what feels reasonable? And then take a smaller micro dose of that and let's create success within 30, 60, 90 days. Because then it feels, okay, now we're going to pay attention to scale.
Have you ever been involved where there have been company mergers, two companies that maybe were competitors, or one was part of the supply chain and now they're being absorbed in? How do you amalgamate that which has not been mixed before? It's like putting peanut butter and jam. They've never been made together, but all of a sudden they're on the sandwich and here you go. And hopefully they like peanut butter and jam.
Yes, I love that. As a kid, I can remember those experimental meals. Like, how would spaghetti and meatballs go with tuna fish and peanut butter? Let's try that. That doesn't sound like a good
No.
But no, it's true. It's a lot of times those things are not talked about. We've been involved in a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We're brought in at almost 3 phases in that experience: the preparation from the seller or the buyer, because there's people involved. And we're people specialists, and we do a lot with emotional intelligence, communication, and leadership alignment. These are great opportunities that often get overlooked because we're just thinking valuation, dollars and cents. What are you acquiring? So we'll help navigate that space. We'll be in the moment while it's happening. And then sometimes it's already happened and we're just like, we're there. So a quick example, the client I was doing the MVV, mission, vision, and value retreat with, the president and CEO, they acquired a company about 90 days ago. We helped advise through that. They're buying a smaller company that's going to help them build out this branch engineering aspect of their company. I asked, why did you do this? I boiled down to it, a key employee that I really wanted to, this is a key person that's going to help us. And I said, okay, that's awesome. What's your onboarding strategy and how are you creating alignment? It was pretty loose, was still going to be reporting to the old company boss. But there was this little window where the old company boss was away. Then the story, it was like, have lunch with that person weekly starting tomorrow and get him into your office. Because I said, you have about 45 days for you to really create the foundation for loyalty to be transferred. If you don't do that, you'll miss a huge opportunity. The emotional intelligence aspect of that is really something that gets overlooked in that merger and acquisition space. That's where we'll come in and advise, especially that key decision maker and the key leadership team.
I'm a company of 100 people. I'm buying another company that'll support my endeavors, and they're like a 5-man team. It's one thing, but and I've gone through that in my past experience in the corporate world, where the state said, listen, you're 5 different healthcare institutions. You shall now become one. And all of a sudden it became a melting pot. How do you take such a large shift and just like, you shove it into a blender and just spin it hard until something comes out? Or how do you get to the end result without, it's going to be chaos without a doubt, right?
Sure.
You're going to have your regular routines. You know what you got to do next. But each end of the day, each campus had a different persona. How do you plan it so it comes together? It took them a decade, by the way, to get that harmony.
Yeah, it can take time for sure, like you said, to get to that harmony. So plan on that. Don't expect it to take 5 minutes. I don't love the blender approach just because everybody gets chopped up and it doesn't feel like it creates the best outcome. This is actually what I did my graduate thesis on, was around leadership transition and organizational transitions. And I think these principles apply. You keep what can stay stable and the same, keep that stable and the same, and draw attention to it. So it's okay, we're 5 different healthcare units or companies, and now we're one, but guess what? We're all still in healthcare. So we're focused. So there's an aspect of stability and continuity, the messaging around that. And you just keep drilling, on continuity and stability. I think the aspect of where do you have trust and credibility already baked in, build on that. And you got to understand, nobody's going to feel good about this right away or have immediate 100% trust. There's going to be skepticism. There's going to be like doubting and all that. But where do you have trust and credibility? Build upon that. Who are your most trusted and credible leaders? Elevate them. There's an aspect of clear communication and also responsiveness to concerns. Do you have town hall meetings? Where can people go with questions if they're like, this really stinks, or I'm really struggling over here? There can be this mindset of leadership that buy-in is, my job as a leader is I'm going to convince you that this is what's best for you and you're going to love it. And that's not what buy-in is. Buy-in is really sharing power and saying, do you want this? Maybe people are like, no, I don't want them. I totally get that. You're going to experience a lot of loss through this change. What is the loss that you experience? Let's talk about it. So there's the whole Kubler-Ross change curve, which is basically the stages of grief in a sense. So whenever there's any kind of major change or shift, if you're not creating space for people to process that and talk about it, you're missing an opportunity to build higher trust and credibility. You're simply managing complexities. Like you said, it's never easy or simple. There's just going to be all kinds of confusion, but you have to manage those. So who is responsible for that? Bucket those and categorize those, I think is really helpful. And is there any kind of defined transition process or plan? In other words, did they say this will take 10 years and here's the map, right? Or is this, can we do this in 6 months or 6 years? Is there a defined plan and how that's being managed? So those 5 principles really will help any kind of significant shift or transition, no matter the size of the company.
But one thing that I find amazingly interesting, 4 years ago, we had a pandemic. 4 years ago, there was a pandemic. And North America was shut down. You don't go to work, you're done. And then gradually people fought their way to some level of commerce back. What I don't understand is why we didn't learn anything with this incredible test bed to come up with new data, new ways to work, new organizations, new federations. Why did we not look at this mechano set and try to rebuild something?
That's a great global question in a way. Some of us found new ways to work, new ways to collaborate. I think the people that I experienced that had a growth mindset realized this is such an amazing opportunity to collaborate with people that we never would have collaborated with before. We never would have networked with before. And it created more of like an awareness to there's a whole world out there. And I've just created such a small world that now has been shut down. And yes, we were all concerned about health and where to get toilet paper early in that crisis. One of the things we found was that it's an amazing opportunity to teach about VUCA. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Leaders knowing how to lead through volatile, uncertain changes. Now that it's been 4 years, we've learned that the organizations that are like actively winning and growing are ones that develop some skills through that experience and learn to ask kind of VUCA questions and didn't run and hide, but realize this is an opportunity to grow and change. How do we grow and change through this?
So one thing that hasn't changed is a tough conversation. How do you make the tough conversation equally meaningful, but more useful?
Yeah, I think in the role of leadership, if I shy away from having those tough, difficult, crucial conversations, I'm missing out on an opportunity for growth for myself and for the other. This could be at any level of leadership. And actually, I've come to appreciate it. It can be even more powerful leading up. So in other words, the person I report to, I'm actually initiating a difficult conversation with them, either about them or about the thing in the department or in the organization that needs to be talked about. Learning those skills, learning to be comfortable with that. That's one of the things that maybe has been a byproduct of some of the pandemic. We've learned that we have to have challenging conversations. Otherwise, we won't know how to make good decisions. We won't know how to get through this. Asking questions and doing it in a way almost goes back to an emerging leader, not to be like, look at me, I'm such a great superstar. That kind of leadership mindset and approach is not effective, hasn't been for years, but I think this emerging leadership generation is kind of like, why would you act like that? That same mindset that says leadership is around, let's have the conversation about what are we going to do to create the best solutions or answers, or what are the challenges that we're facing. So if I have that approach to leadership, having crucial conversations feels very, it's not me attacking you. We don't have to be defensive. Of course, there's going to be emotions and feelings, and there's going to be moments that feel a little awkward and we might need to self-regulate. But the more leaders are practicing building the muscles of the 5 areas of emotional intelligence, self-regulation, social regulation, motivation, some of those key areas of emotional intelligence, then having crucial conversations is what I do every day, all day. This is part of the job. This is how we grow and become better. If we're not having crucial conversations, like, why would we miss out on that opportunity for growth?
It sounds like you're having these conversations. You have to have the art of telling a story nailed down. Not too long, not too short, just the right temp, not too hot, not too cold. How do you craft that? Do you help the leaders develop their story and then get them to practice it so that it's them, but they just have to have the art of explaining themselves? Is that kind of an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think I like that kind of Goldilocks. That's actually an illustration I've used a lot in my career, Bernie. Like those Goldilocks moments, not too much and not too little, learning how to just right. And it's not like I come into a conversation or a meeting going, I necessarily know here's the 5 stories that I'm ready to tell. But a little bit you do. You start to learn what stories work. This is a growing edge for me that I would love to share. I've always told stories in my work as a leader. I've done plenty of public speaking. So of course, storytelling is one of the best ways to create engagement with people. One of the areas that I think I'm trying to grow in is what's the outcome that I'm hoping is produced by telling the story? Why am I telling the story? By trying to elicit an emotion, an action, an idea, a thought, or spark a conversation. What is the intent or impact of that story? I just came across this book and I'm actually listening to it on Audible. I'd love to just give a quick little book plug because this has been really helpful for me. It's called The Perfect Story. It's a great read. She tells this quick story about don't eat the crowns. And it was fascinating to me because she grew up, she was born, she had 2 different color eyes, one brown, one green. And she would always get comments all the time, different things. And it would always lead to awkwardness. And then she changed the story around the experience for her. She made up this tale that when she was a kid, she ate all the green crowns. And the next day she woke up and one eye was green. And then people are like shocked, right? What? And she's, no, I'm just kidding. But it shifted the whole experience just by learning how to craft a story around it. Even though it wasn't a true story, it created relational connection that created more conversation rather than disconnection and awkwardness. She was like, oh, the power of story is actually, if I can utilize that, it helps me to create a deeper connection with people in leadership, especially. So that's something that I'm learning to do better in my own work and my coaching and advising, as well as helping people craft their stories, true or not, that will help them connect.
Sounds like most fables.
I'm still waiting for that Hansel Gretel seminar that Bernie's putting on.
Yes.
Brant, is there a geography that you find is more natural for you? And how do we get a hold of you?
I live in the U.S. on East Coast, Mid-Atlantic region, Richmond, Virginia. My company's based out of Philadelphia. We serve clients from Arizona to Chicago to Orlando, all over the nation. I'd love to do some work on the West Coast too. You can get a hold of us. We actually just rebranded. We're shvpartners.com. SHV stands for Sustaining Human Value. So really that's our passion, to sustain human value within organizations, within companies, within leadership teams, nonprofit. We work with a lot of the trades, commercial construction. We work with a lot of manufacturing and production companies. And so you can look me up on LinkedIn, Brant Lingle, or our company, shvpartners.com.
Do you drift into Canada?
I would love to. I have a lot of connections in Canada, and my daughter went to McGill University in Montreal. So I love McGill and Montreal and would love to spend a little more time in Canada as well.
That was a good response. I like that. Don't worry.
My favorite French word, Bernie, is allons-y. I learned this. We spent a bit of a summer there. I was on a sabbatical, And I just love that word because it's basically, let's go. And I just used it with my kids all the time. Let's go. We're going to the next cafe, next restaurant, next museum.
I love it. Thank you, Brant Lingle, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. So if you're intrigued and you want to get everybody aligned inside your space, yourself included, reach out to Brant. He has the skill set. Maybe you'll get a story out of it. Maybe not Hansel and Gretel. You might get a good story out of the deal.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@zoocreativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayneemotive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8, and the letter U.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we'd like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from Akers Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer, please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.